Hello, you freaky freaks of nature. Today, your father of knowledge and power, Cockroach Johnson, is here to learn you guys a thing or three, or possibly even six, about TF2 in hopes of giving your brains the same kind of satisfaction you get from hitting a clean air shot or watching these godforsaken videos. Now, those of you who know me and have stuck around me know that I love biology, way more than any normal person should, and as such, when I was going through another one of my long, arduous nights of research in the library until freaking 1 AM, just when I was about to bid farewell to this cruel world, I discovered the existence of something truly magical. It's a little-known protein complex called TF2. Okay, I kinda lied, it's not actually little known at all. It's actually incredibly well known, and basically anybody who's even remotely competent with biology would have actually come across it at least once. But I digress. This makes it sound cooler. TF2, unlike Sonic Hedgehog, isn't actually named after the beloved video game, but instead it stands for transcription factor 2. This is an example of general transcription factors. There are multiple different types, and all of them interconnect with one another to create the TF2D complex, aka the RNA polymerase II pre-initiation complex, specifically for eukaryotes. But yeah, it's a very long name, but don't worry, as it's not actually as confusing as you might think. Now, given the fact that I've name-dropped the fact that one part of the complex is called TF2D, you could probably assume that there's a general transcription factor named TF2D. And yes, you would be correct. This general transcription factor is the precursor to the entire complex. However, before we get into that, and what it actually does, we need to go over a few biological terms that most of you will probably be familiar with. So forgive me if you are, just skip ahead to around this point here, ish, possibly, maybe. That will bring you over to where I start talking about the TF2 mumbo jumbo specifically. Else you can just stick here with me and do a little biology revision. Would be nice, you know, gets the view counts up, keeps in that audience retention. Would love it, personally. Plus you get to hear more of my amazing voice. But yes, anyways, everything I've mentioned here, or I'm going to mention from this point onwards, occurs in the cell's nucleolus. What's a nucleolus? Well, inside every human being is millions of cells, and inside every single one of those cells is a nucleus, and inside that nucleus is the nucleolus, which is basically a big fat area where lots of processes that the cell needs to do to survive actually takes place. For the sake of making sure this video stays relatively short and on topic, let's just simplify what happens here in this organelle as just being that this is the space in the cell where the DNA would just be vibing. DNA is just straight vibing here, completely chilling in its own element in a double helix form until another protein known as RNA polymerase II comes along, reads the DNA to transcribe it into mRNA. That's messenger RNA. I'm pretty sure you all know that, but, you know, it's very useful to reiterate. Or I suppose reiterate what your teacher told you about 17 years ago, but you know what I mean. Obviously, this process is known as transcription. The TF2 proteins help to start the transcription ability, which is why it's known as the pre-initiation complex, as in, it's the pre-initiation of transcription. Before transcription starts, this is what happens. Now welcome back, all of you who skipped the explanation. I'm sure you're all amazing biology experts. Now, sit down, shut up, and learn yourself some Hey! Ooh, that's actually not very professional of me to swear. Forgive me. Try my best to not, but you know, I'm getting better as time goes on. Now everybody, let me learn you some things that you'll probably never use in your life by using these wonderful drawings made by me as a helpful visual aid. Oh, aren't they beautiful? They are. Don't be mean to them, they're freaking amazing, alright? I spent way too long on these. Please, somebody appreciate it. Like, tell me in the comments that they look nice. But yeah. Right. So, the protein complex begins with this introduction of TF2D. I say it's an introduction, it's basically just chilling by itself. What a strapping, wonderful young protein it is. Now, something very important to note is that a lot of proteins aren't actually just one singular entity, but rather they are comprised of one or more subunits. Again, to simplify things, we'll just say that TF2D itself only has two subunits, one of which is something known as the Tata binding protein. I'm putting emphasis on the name because it's very important. See, in order for this entire complex to even perform its function, which is to recruit RNA polymerase II and, make it do transcription, it needs to obviously recruit RNA polymerase II to the DNA. How does it do that? Well, it needs to actually bind and recognize the DNA to begin with. So you have a little protein here, it needs to bind to DNA. How's it gonna do this? Well, that's where the subunit comes in. Again, for the third time, to heavily simplify this incredibly difficult topic. DNA is a very long piece of genetic information, and on that long piece of information there are different regions that can be characterized by the traits that are present there. In other words, DNA has different regions in it. These regions can be easily recognized due to the presence of different bases or different characteristics there. For example, the area that we care about is known as the promoter. The promoter itself is basically just something that can be used as a signal to say, "Oh mate, yeah, this is where the proteins are being made." Specifically, it shows off where the protein begins. When transcription starts, this is the beginning of the protein, not the end. But this is usually marked by something known as the Tata box, a region of DNA that is filled with bases thymine and adenine. So, there's a very, very large quantity of T's and A's present here. Hence why the region is known as the Tata box. T's and A's, you get the point. I'm pretty sure you do at least. So now we have this region of DNA that has a lot of repeating units of T and A's. So what? Like, why should we care? What does this mean? Well, with this Tata box present, this allows for whatever enzyme or protein with a Tata binding subunit to recognize this area and bind to it to start performing whatever function it's designed to do. So with that large explanation out the way, you'd probably expect TF2D to do the exact same thing I just described, wouldn't you? You would expect TF2D to bind to the Tata domain. Yeah, not even close. TF2D might be like Demo Man with the fact that it has a lot of jobs to do, but it needs support. And when it comes across DNA and reaches that Tata box, it does recognize it, but it's essentially confused. It doesn't really know what to do with this Tata box. So, this is where our friend TF2A comes in.
Scientists in the future have studied your ass for centuries.
This is going to be the first addition to our complex. Now, TF2A has a job to do, and in order to perform that job itself, it needs to actually bind to TF2D.
Oh, what's your name? I love you.
So now our two proteins, TF2A and TF2D, are bound to one another. From this, TF2D can now be assisted by TF2A. TF2D's Tata binding protein is now being bound to the DNA's Tata box within the DNA's minor groove due to the assistance of stabilization from TF2A. In layman's terms, TF2A is like glue and sticks TF2D onto DNA. Now, there are some papers that say TF2A only helps to stabilize this interaction, to stop the binding from coming apart. However, other papers say that the binding itself cannot even occur without the presence of TF2A. Personally, I can't say what's happening here because, who am I to tell you what's happening? On a molecular level, that hasn't even been definitively proven yet by real smart science boys. I can't say that sort of thing. I've just graduated, bro. I don't know anything. I'm just reading off stuff which I've researched in my spare time. But for all extensive purposes, TF2A helps TF2D to bind to the Tata box in DNA in some way. But anyways, we now have a complex, sort of. We have two proteins that are bound together, that are now bound to DNA. So what happens next? Then along comes something which I consider to be the most important components of this complex, alongside TF2D, because that's also very important. This part is known as TF2B.
I'm a bloody unicorn!
This also binds to TF2D itself. So this is now physically attached to the complex, and from this, it can now physically attach yet another thing, RNA polymerase II. By doing that, it then incorporates RNA polymerase II into the complex with everything else. So essentially, TF2B's job is to join both RNA polymerase II and TF2D into one big complex. But it's not big enough yet, because TF2B also recruits TF2F into the complex along with it. This one just has a little role. Its purpose here is really just to stabilize all the interactions with TF2B, TF2D, and RNA polymerase II. However, that's not to say it's not important, it's just more of a stabilizer. You could think of it being like TF2A if you wish. I wouldn't, but I can see why you would draw those comparisons. I have a mate who did when we were studying for this, for a test, because it showed up on a test. Now, we have what is the TF2D, TF2A, TF2B, TF2F, RNA polymerase II complex. And something else is going to join it now, known as TF2E. This is here solely to recruit and regulate what comes next to stop it from going completely awry. Basically, TF2E prepares everything in the complex for promoter clearance, and then recruits TF2H. Now, TF2H has the ability to perform two different things, one of which is called kinase activity, and another one is called helicase activity. While scientists still aren't exactly sure what the helicase activity does, there are theories about it. Some suggest it does promoter melting in conjunction with TF2E. Regardless, what is known is that the kinase activity performed by TF2H, which is dependent on ATP, is done primarily to phosphorylate a region of RNA polymerase II. This region is known as the C-terminal domain. That is, unless, you know, all the more papers I read were wrong. And like, I did a test and I got pretty high on it, so I'm thinking I got that right. So, I mean, if I got it wrong, oops, but like, I don't know what to tell you, man. I'm pretty sure that's correct. Dude, I gotta be more sure of myself when I'm telling you these things. Like, I know it's correct, but like, I'm just always second guessing myself, even though I know I'm right. Research this in your own time as well if you've gone this far into the video. I find stuff super interesting, but obviously I'm just one bloke. I think you Google this, go read some papers, you'll probably find even more interesting things. I'm basically saying do your own research, don't believe everything that somebody tells you on the internet. But I mean, if it's in a book, chances are it's right, and I read half of this stuff in a book. Anyways, more importantly, great, next part. As I mentioned, it phosphorylates a region on RNA polymerase II named the C-terminal domain. What phosphorylation does is it adds a phosphate group that's sourced from the ATP to the RNA polymerase II C-terminal domain. From this phosphorylation, something called promoter clearance occurs, which is basically the RNA polymerase II breaking free from the transcription factors, and then transcription can actually begin. So yeah, that's the big basic simplified overview on what TF2 is, transcription factor 2. I hope you've learned something from this. Just as a little recap, the complex goes TF2D, TF2A, TF2B, TF2F, TF2E, TF2H, and RNA polymerase II coming in with TF2B. Again, hopefully you enjoyed this, hopefully you found my voice soothing and enjoyable to listen to. Yeah, biology is pretty sick, right? I don't know, just gonna say some words here, just say stuff off the top of my head. But I spent way too long researching this stuff over the past few months for this fat exam I had to do on it. And like other proteins as well, it wasn't just on this, but you know what I mean. I had to do things on stuff like Sonic Hedgehog and ZBTB7A, which, come to think of it, both ZBTB7A and TF2H both contains zinc finger domains. So that's actually pretty interesting now that I think about it. But like, I won't go into it now, but you know, maybe later I could do another video explaining zinc finger domains or what ZBTB7A is. Like, there's a reason I'm mentioning it alongside TF2 and Sonic Hedgehog. Like, you know, this is me egging you on to do a little bit more research as to, ooh, why is this cool, man? Maybe comment here if you figure out why. I want you to look at this. It's got a funny video game name, but it's not. It means something else. Look it up. It's funny. Trust me, it's kind of cool. If you find out what video game it's named after, you just come right here and tell me in the comments. Or, you know, maybe join my Discord and tell me there. Could be fun. But yeah, seriously, for real, I really do hope you all enjoyed this video. It took a lot of time and effort to make, and the research, obviously. Just want to make sure my life wasn't wasted in a library, so I've turned this into a video. Yeah, just please subscribe, watch more of my videos so I can be paid fat stacks of dosh from the overlords at Google HQ, and maybe join my Discord as well so we can build a fat community to take over this hellsire and I can rule it all with single-handedly with just an iron fist. I mean, yeah, maybe you could start watching my beautiful Twitch streams as well where you get to see things like this.
I didn't realize it would go that quickly.
Anyways, past all of this, yeah, maybe if you like my content, you could like other people's content as well who inspire me. Such as Macaggio. I love this guy. I have nothing else to say. He makes me feel things that no other man has made me feel before, and I don't mean it in a weird way. I just really like how he makes his funny videos. Don't believe me that he's funny? Here's a little clip.
Oh, knock knock, someone's at the door. It's my husband, and he's caught me in bed with another woman.
Anyways, that's all the time I have. Please get out of my house.